Move to our next submission. It's a submission from Tearfund NZ, and the group from Tearfund in the room. Welcome. Now I've got Claire and Laura on my list. Right in the middle is fine.
Right.
Introduce yourself, take it away.
I'm Claire from Tearfund. It's really nice to be here this morning. I want to start by telling you a story. It's a story about two boys, and their names are Sak and Tawan. So Sak and Tawan grew up in Laos, and they were from a family who really struggled with poverty. So a family who really struggled to meet their basic needs every day. One day, totally out of the blue, an opportunity just fell on Sak and Tawan's parents' lap. They were given the opportunity for their boys to go to Thailand for an education and hopefully a better future. So the parents agonised over this decision. Do we do it? Do we not? In the end, they did. They sent their boys to Thailand. Once in Thailand, Sak and Tawan were really vulnerable. They'd never been there before, they didn't speak the language, and they were in the care of total strangers. Tragically, Sak and Tawan ended up being abused and exploited. Their situation came to the attention of local NGOs, and within about 2 months, they were removed from harm. Now, the legal expert at one of these NGOs then relentlessly pursued justice for these boys. This person wanted to hold the perpetrator to account for the crimes that had been committed. After a lot of work, they eventually got charges laid, and then they got a successful conviction. So the offender was sentenced to 34 years in prison and ordered to pay compensation to the boys. Sak and Tawan got to go home. Now that's a good end to the story, right? Don't you just love it when the relentless pursuit of justice actually results in justice? I wish there were more stories that ended like this. That story, the local NGO in that story, is Tearfund's partner in Thailand called Lift. So Tearfund have worked with Lift for over a decade, and the work that they do shows the type of change that can happen with robust legal systems and really targeted legislative reform. In New Zealand, we don't have many stories that end like that. And today, you guys get a chance to change that. Tearfund is really supportive of the amendments that are currently before the Select Committee. We think it's a great idea to look to align penalties for slavery and trafficking offences across the Crimes Act. And I think the fact that this bill got support across the political spectrum in its first reading shows how much of a no-brainer it is. However, my question and my challenge to the committee this morning is, what good are penalties on their own? So what good are penalties if there are no offenders to whom these penalties can be applied? What good are penalties if our legislative framework does not allow us to properly prosecute and convict traffickers? And what good are penalties if we're unable to effectively identify and support victims of trafficking in New Zealand? Penalties are important, but as has already been said, they are sort of the end of the process. And we would suggest that amending penalties alone is essentially meaningless unless we also address the other shortcomings in New Zealand's legislative and policy framework related to trafficking in persons. And the bill that's before you today presents a really unique opportunity for us to make some progress in this area and address some inadequacies in our law. And these are inadequacies that basically make life easier if you're a trafficker and make life a whole lot more unjust if you are a victim or a survivor of trafficking. And I just want to talk about one of these inadequacies, and it's already been touched on briefly by Clayton. So at the moment, New Zealand's law does not do enough to protect children from trafficking. So there's a key international instrument to do with trafficking, and it's called the Palermo Protocol. And it sets out trafficking as this crime of 3 parts. So you've got act, means, and purpose. So the act is what the trafficker is doing. Are they recruiting someone? Are they transporting someone? Are they harbouring someone? Then you've got your means, and that's how are they doing this? How are they making this happen? So are they using threats? Are they forcing? Are they deceiving someone? And then you've got the purpose. So why are they doing these things? For the purpose of exploitation, forced labour, servitude. Act means purpose. And now the Palermo Protocol does not require the means element to be present if the individual that's being trafficked is a child. So you don't have to prove that there was deception or coercion if you're dealing with a child, and this reflects the inherent vulnerability of children. Our law does not reflect this aspect of the Palermo Protocol. Under our current law, a case can only be considered trafficking if you can prove the means, regardless of the age of the person in question. So we have set an unnecessarily high bar. And you've already heard from Rebecca and Clayton how this plays out in reality. It means that it is really, really hard to prosecute trafficking cases in New Zealand. It's also really hard to identify and support vulnerable individuals who have been affected by this. And it also means that we are out of whack internationally, like we're not aligned. So today, Tearfund is asking the committee to use the opportunity that you have to make further changes to Section 98D of the Crimes Act. Specifically, we want to see that the means element is not relevant if the victim of trafficking is a child. It seems like such a small change, but the reality is it would just make the world of difference. It would actually let us get more prosecutions. It would let us identify and support people who have been through horrific experiences. That story I told at the start, Sak and Tawan, Lift worked really hard to secure a conviction in that case. Luckily for them, in Thailand, the Anti-Human Trafficking Act does not require means to be proven if the person is a child. So that's aligned with the international standard. We believe a conviction in Sak and Tawan's case would have been extremely unlikely if they had had to prove the means. Let me just frame that up another way. If Sak and Tawan had been unfortunate enough to be trafficked to New Zealand, the outcome that they faced may have been significantly worse. And isn't that an incredibly sobering thought to reflect on? One final thought from me today. We're aware that the consultation process on this bill comes at a time when there is a wider conversation happening, and there is another bill that has been published for discussion. It's been alluded to already. I'm talking about the Combating Trafficking in Persons and Modern Forms of Slavery bill that was published in December 2024. And as Greg's already mentioned, that bill includes a number of other changes to the Crimes Act, plus the one I've just been talking about, plus a bunch of other stuff. Ultimately, Tearfund believes that if New Zealand wants to see more stories end in justice, the way that Sak and Tawan's did, we need change at the scale that's set out in that Combating Persons and Modern Forms of Slavery bill. So let's start that change today by using this tangible opportunity that we have in front of us to change New Zealand's legal definition of child trafficking. But let's not stop there, right? Let's together relentlessly pursue justice until New Zealand becomes a place that is extremely unsafe to be a trafficker and a place that is safe from harm for vulnerable men, women, and children. Thanks.
Thank you.